So what's going on here? Let's back it up a second. So the Democrats have their own version of the Brezhnev Doctrine. So Brezhnev was the head of the Soviet Union from 1964 to 1982. And he declared that no communist country would ever be allowed to leave what he called the world socialist system. So once you're a communist country, you can't leave it. And if you try, like Czechoslovakia did, then the Soviet Union will destroy you. Like literally with tanks, they will come in and destroy you. Look up the Prague Spring in 1968. So the Brezhnev Doctrine says that communism will never be rolled back, ever. Anywhere it's initially imposed, it must remain forever. Like our welfare system in America. Anywhere it's ever existed, it must always exist for all time. Welfare can never be reduced. The Democrats believe that once an entitlement exists, it can never be rolled back. What's the line? Is it Thomas Sowell or Milton Friedman who said there's no such thing, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program? It can never be rolled back, it can only be enlarged. Any expansion of welfare must exist forever and all time. So what Trump did, he issued a new rule that changes some of the work qualifications for welfare. And when he did that, the welfare industrial complex just lost their minds. When you think of someone on welfare, who do you think of? Picture this in your brain. All right, specifically food stamps. So when you think of someone on food stamps, who are you imagining? Like picture that person in your brain right now. Is it one person? Maybe two? What age are they? Do they have kids? No kids? Like who are you imagining? Like really visualize that person and keep them in your mind. So when this first happened, this rule change that the president is talking about, Washington Post came back and said, just in time for Christmas, the Trump administration is requiring more people to go hungry. Like what a stupid headline that is. Washington Post is just BuzzFeed. What garbage. Requiring more people to go hungry? Schumer said that Trump is showing deep and shameful cruelness. AOC wrote this tweet about how her family relied on food stamps when her dad died at 48. She says, if this happened then, we might have just starved. And now many people will. So what we're talking about here is there is a loophole. Usually I'm pretty skeptical of that word, so I'll go with exemption. The law says that all able-bodied adults without dependents must work or train for a job at least 20 hours a week in order to receive food stamps. If you don't work, you can only collect 3 months of benefits in any 36-month period. Got it? So I want to emphasize this. We're talking about able-bodied adults without dependents. So AOC's mom would not have been affected by this reform, right? In that tweet, she's like, oh, if this happened then, we would have starved. Nope, wouldn't have affected your mom at all because she had kids, dependents, you. The loophole in the law states that, says that any state can request an exemption for certain areas that have too high of an unemployment rate. And that kind of makes sense, right? So if there's a work requirement that in order to receive welfare, you have to get a job, but there's no jobs, that kind of makes sense that maybe there's an exemption there. So there's waivers for certain areas that have high unemployment rates. The problem is the entire state of Illinois is exempted from this requirement and like great swaths of other states. So it's almost like that standard doesn't even exist at all because states have applied it and gotten these exemptions over the years. So Trump has changed that. And he said you can't get a waiver. So this county, this area, this state can't get a waiver in an area if the jobless rate is below, I think it's 6%. And those areas are only given a 1-year limit, so it's not forever. And the waiver can only be applied to local labor markets, not an entire state. Okay? Makes sense? Like is that as draconian as the left makes it seem? People starving. Now, before everyone goes freaking out about starving to death, 36 million Americans receive food stamps. Under this new law, 668,000 people would be affected. It's 2%. And they're still going to get food stamps. They just have to work 20 hours a week or train 20 hours a week for a job. And it only applies to able-bodied adults without children. And it won't affect anyone over the age of 50.